Welcome back. We are now ready to define our own constructor functions, and we get to call it. How cool is that? Okay, let's look at lines 1, 2, and 3. Here, you see I am defining my constructor function named person. You will realize that it has the capital first letter, and that is by convention because all of JavaScript's built-in constructors start with a capital, such as array and number and string. Okay, this person blueprint will only take in one argument, name, and since this is a constructor, I have to assign this keyword, this dot name, to be the argument name. Okay? And what this does is when you call this constructor function with the new keyword, right? And yes, to call a constructor function, you have to use the new keyword. Once you call it with the new keyword, what JavaScript does internally, right, is that it creates a new object. Okay. And then this new object will have a func property, and the value of that is your constructor function. Okay. Now, since you are using this inside of a normal function that's inside of an object, this will exit one level from these pink curly braces and refer to the new object. Okay. So when you constructed Phil, this will now refer to Phil. This .name is now Phil.name. Okay, let's take a look. Phil, we can see that it is a person, and the name is now Phil, and the value is what we passed in, Phil. If we make another person, Bob, let's put this as Bob, we now have Bob, and we now have Phil. But notice we did not have to rewrite this constructor function. Once again, this goes back to polymorphism, right? We can reuse code and get different results, like Bob and Phil, without having to rewrite anything. Okay, that sounds good. Let's move on. Now, one exception that I want to talk about when you are writing your own constructor function is that you never, ever, ever want to have a return statement in it. Okay, I added the return 5 statement. Let's see what happens. Phil, it looks right. Bob, it looks right. Yep. So why should we avoid return statements? Well, if you return anything that's not an object, it's fine. But if you return an object, let's see what happens. Bob, Phil. So in your constructors, if you return an object, when you create it with the new keyword, the new object would just be that object that your constructor returned, which we do not want because it skipped over binding the this.name, so we don't have anything. If you return an object, let's say with x and the value is 5, we're just going to get that. It doesn't matter how many arguments or thises that we put in there. Okay, let's check it again. It's still going to get that one object that we return. So that's no good. So remember, no return statements in your constructor because the new keyword will create its own return statement. And that return statement returns a new object. Okay. All right. Sounds good. Let's move on.